Oh, I will,
Okay, yeah,
I'll
sorry.
let you, I'll let you do whatever you.
I was going to, sorry. Here we go. I don't have anything new to talk about on deep dive, really. Does anyone else?
Can't think of anything new, but we had a pretty good backlog from last week. Didn't we?
Yes. Yeah, sorry. I moved that over and I was making sure we didn't have anything else that had popped up since then. There we go. Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, Michelle, I know you have some work helm stuff. Do you want to
Sure, I
start
can
slash lead that?
start us off.
Here,
Let me
I'll-
just open my,
yeah, if you would you prefer to share? Or I can also share, I have that open
I
somewhere.
mean, you'd be looking at the stuff you're interested in, so I don't know. I can go over what I've put there, but okay. If you
Yeah, sorry,
then I
you can
will.
go for it.
Okay, I haven't gotten to read, I just managed to scroll down here. I didn't actually get to read any of this stuff.
Okay.
But some of the issues, so we need to add to chain log. This is mostly, most of these files are just moved ALKiln test to ALKiln, which we can
Yes.
change back. I don't know if that's necessary.
That was like my first suggestion, is we should change it back. I don't think it was
Okay.
necessary, and I like the test names better because it is just the tests.
It's
so.
sure, it's sure. Hang on. I'm just gonna put. Different issue. So one of the main things was the ALKiln dangerous debug.
Yeah.
It was really useful for debugging what was going on. And I don't want to keep adding it and removing it and adding it and removing it. It's just really hard to see what's going on when it's on a, you know, remote server that you can't see live. It is underscored to be private, you know, to say it's internal.
Yeah.
And the like passwords that I'm taking pictures of there are not
Yes.
like they're the admin password that's in the temporary servers. So, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I am hesitant about it. Like, it's one of those, it's like looks fine as is now. Like, I was gonna suggest maybe we add a specific test for it, but I can't think of an easy one. But it's one of those things that it's like, oh, I just don't like having this. Like, it defeats it, not completely defeats the purpose of like putting all of these safeguards in there in the first place, but it does make them more risky to have it there. And so I don't know. It's like I honestly want to say, yeah, just add it and remove it and add it and remove it. Like it's, if it's for debugging and it's not something that we would use once we have a thing that we know consistently can start up a server and it can work, then I don't think it's worth it. But like, if we wanted to, we can document it for sure, and we could like put it in, like, I know we have developer notes now, or like contributing notes and stuff, and that could go in there of like, if you're having problems with authentication, like edit your source code and add this like on these lines or something like that. But it feels risky leaving it in, like there, at some point, it will get complex enough that there will be some missing switch and someone's like account, account screenshots are now on GitHub. And they either notice or they don't notice for like several weeks or something, so.
Can we just change the session vars function to return null to always return null, so we don't have to remove the infrastructure?
That's the infrastructure is the thing that I'm concerned about. To respond to that. It's like the way it's set up now is fine. Like I can't see any problems with it, but it's just the fact that it exists and like an if statement could get mistyped or something like that in a future change. And it would then make it much harder to then like or much easier to like leak. The fact we have these like random sort of conditions that can turn off the stuff that we just set up. Or you just set up. You spent a lot of work setting this up, and it feels it's a good idea. It's one of those things of like, oh yeah, this is a good security thing to have, and I feel like it's hard to do security well, and this is like a thing that definitely feels very easy to mess up. And you only need one mess up to like make a lot of your security stuff not useful.
It just took a while to figure out, so can we have a link to it, to like
Yeah.
that code?
Yeah, like having it in a commit that is not the main published thing, I think that's a good idea. And like we can document it and we can link, say like here's an example of it working on this commit. I think that's a great idea. Or even if it wanted to have it in a separate branch, like a live branch, that doesn't feel as useful as just linking to the commit because we're not gonna keep the branch updated. But like the idea is good, I think.
Say, a link to what instead?
Like if like we could just make a branch that has this and then not merge it and point people to the branch instead. But the commit I think is better and will stay more consistent. And I don't think we would like put the effort in to like keep that branch updated or like continually rebase it off of the latest code. So sorry, that was me sort of.
Yep, that's fair.
Thinking out loud.
That's fair. This should probably be in conversations somewhere down later, but it's just easier to edit all one thing. Hang on, let me update it in case my computer crashes. Okay. The folder that contains the action needs a name. We talked about putting action at the end of the thing, but like part of my idea for a convention would be that it would keep everything together.
Yeah, I was thinking about that this morning. Is that for you, or is that for people finding the action?
I mean, it's for me and or other people finding the action.
I don't think it would be useful for both. What I was going to say is I don't think people are going to find the action by stumbling across the repo and like seeing, oh, this is the folder that says action. I'll use this, like,
Well,
they'll find it
no,
through
it would,
documentation elsewhere.
it would say action underscore GitHub underscore server.
Well, I know it's gonna say more,
would
I'm just saying,
like if we add other actions, then they would be proximal to that action, and then there would be one place to find the actions. Like my
Fair.
brain doesn't keep it in order. Otherwise, it doesn't remember the random name we give it.
if it's for, yeah, if it's for you, that's fine. I was mostly gonna say, I don't think it's going to be like a thing that helps discovery of the action for others. Because I don't think most people go to our repo to find the actions. They go to the documentation or something else. But if it's for you, that's fine. Like, I'm not gonna,
Okay. So, so Git action GitHub server. Yes? Is that sufficient?
yeah, seems fine.
Okay. The outputs from the GitHub run, have you had a chance to look at those?
I don't think so. I saw you were setting some outputs somewhere.
Okay.
But I hadn't
so
seen
let
what
me just,
they were, or like all of
so,
them. I guess that was, well, okay, actually, I did have some thoughts on this, because I did see that you were setting outputs, and I think I was. The action is set up right now, so it's like, you run this. And then
But
the
these are the
server is,
outputs.
you, yes, well, no, I was saying, like, the way I was understanding it is I hadn't realized you'd split it up entirely. And so to use this, you now call GitHub server action, and then you call Helm action, like in your workflow or whatever, you have to call both of
Yes.
them. That wasn't how I was thinking of setting it up.
But then that's what would require them to pass us all the information. To pass us all the environment variables, to like this would have to duplicate. That's what I was talking about with the duplication. It would have to duplicate all the inputs. It would have to duplicate like the environment variables, like all the stuff that we do in. So.
It does?
Look, like we do a lot in here. So we have all these inputs, which maybe we don't have to pass on, but I think we do.
So we need to pass on server URL, developer API key, because those are things we're creating.
Server URL, developer API key. We'll have to pass on the Elk Helm version, max seconds for setup, and server reload timeout seconds. We have to pass them all
Sure,
on.
yeah.
Okay, and then we have to create like.
I don't think we need to do these.
We might not have to create the environment variables. That might be the only duplication, but it is the duplication. And we could do
setting
the
outputs
server
and inputs from a bunch of other stuff is also duplication, to be fair.
Yeah. Also, this would allow people, we could do the server stuff we are doing internally, but this lets people also do other things like, where did I comment it out here? So they would be able to do stuff with the Docker container, like make more users or do other things that they need to do with the Docker container in order to run their tests. So if they wanted to make another user, I think there would be a way to do that with Bash. Like I know Michael, Michael has users. So I don't know how many users he has. I don't know if he wants to run them as admin or if he wants to run them as developers, but I bet he doesn't want to run them as admins on his regular tests. I don't know, you know?
Yeah.
So
you're right. That is a thing I hadn't thought of. It makes it. I had been thinking, oh, it makes it a little bit more flexible, but I hadn't considered that, like, yeah, people will need to just arbitrarily set up whatever they want outside of just a configuration on the Docker simple server, and this would let them do that.
Okay,
As much as I guess I don't know, I don't like the GitHub outputs. Like, it's very confusing, and when I've tried to use it, it's usable, but it's just very confusing.
it's super
But
annoying.
it's,
super
yeah,
annoying.
but it's like to let people do something that they just wouldn't be able to do at all, it's probably worth it.
Yeah. We
Okay.
could set an environment variable ourselves that says install method, but that's internal. We could do
I
underscore.
like inputs. I like
lcom.
inputs. I like using inputs like this. I think that's fine.
Okay.
And as long as as long as that defaults, which I think it does. I think as long, yeah, that defaults to like the existing behavior playground, then I think that's fine.
Okay. Existing behavior playground? What? Defaults, I see, yes, sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, like if you don't put install method, it will do playground. Not,
Yeah.
it's not
And
technically
people
install,
using
but
this
like it will
would
do playground stuff.
probably be doing something more advanced anyway.
Yeah.
I do know that Michael does use his S3 server, so this might not be as practical for him anyway.
Well, so, okay,
little thing.
everyone will use an S, like, that's the thing, is we suggest everyone uses an S3 server on production, but like, it depends on what you're trying to test. If he's trying to test on what would you get from S3? Like existing sessions or existing. If it was something like we were testing like dashboard or something, then you would need like existing user sessions and stuff that you would expect to be on the server, and that would be fairly complicated. But the way that I'm thinking of this is you just want to test the package. Like, you aren't trying to test anything on a server. You just want to make sure that this package, sort of our style interview packages where you can install it and go through and fill out a form. Like, you're only testing the form, and you're no longer testing like what the setup is on the server, where you don't like you aren't worried about that as much.
Yeah, Michael's testing weird stuff, but
He
I
is
can
testing
check
weird
with
stuff, yeah.
him. And
So like this
so
might not be useful for him. It doesn't have to be useful for him. I
it
wasn't
doesn't have
really
to be
intending it
useful
to
for
be useful for
everyone.
him.
I
Yes,
just
yeah.
wanted to say that.
fine.
Response. Don't love that format, but does allow people to work with their doctor. Oh, the question was what to give as outputs. So we didn't actually address that. The stuff I'm giving as outputs is the admin email and admin password, because we ourselves need that information for our tests.
We do.
And so does Michael.
Yeah.
Yes, because we test signing in,
Oh, we do this. Okay.
right?
Okay.
Also the server API key to pass it on to AL Kilman, the server URL. I know it's
Yes,
just localhost, but
Well, yeah. I'm okay with exporting those. We at any point could change it to 127.0.0.1 or something, which is the same as localhost, but we could change it to something else, and this just makes it
Exactly.
easier to do that. So yeah, I'm okay with outputs as server URL, API key, 100%. We should do that. I guess we have to do the admin email and the password. Less happy about that, but that's also fine.
yeah, it just, all the secret information that Docker is getting, I couldn't see any other information that we're giving to Docker that like someone would
generate in here.
need,
No, yeah, we're not.
right? Like, we don't need any of this stuff. Do we need to allow people to set the memory?
No, that's a default thing that I do to prevent doc assemble from it prevents it from using like way too much memory and completely working the server. It's something that I mostly do on my machine, so it's more like how it would behave on AWS or something. And I do think we want that still here, because otherwise it will just like the GitHub action would become unresponsive and wouldn't really work anymore. And it would be very confusing to try and figure out, because, oh, how do you figure out that it's using so much memory? You have to output the memory usage every 2 seconds or something, and it would just be a pain to figure out. And so I'd rather the GitHub action not become responsive and Docassemble simply run out of memory, which would be a more understandable error. And then, but if we need someone, I don't think we need someone to control it. If we do, I think that's something we could add. Adding outputs like wouldn't break existing stuff.
That would be
It's
an
like
input. That would be an input anyway.
or inputs. Yeah, sorry. Adding inputs or outputs like shouldn't break existing stuff. So I think if we have a minimal set that we need to work, there's nothing clearly that I think we should be able to change. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Did not realize we needed that.
Yeah, that helps. It's not unnecessary, but that was something I was thinking about.
Sure, and I don't know what volume is either, but I will take.
Volume sets the config. So volume, it says here where there's a file, there's a folder on this machine called temp config. I want you to map that to a folder on the Docker container called temp config. And temp config is where and then later on or earlier on, somewhere in that command, we are telling Docassemble, hey, look in temp config for the config file. Yeah, the command right before it says look in temp config for my config. And so we're just creating that file on the Docker container.
Okay, I thought that's what this was doing, but okay. Oh, no, that's
creating a file on this machine.
Internally, okay, I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
So we can copy it later.
Yep.
Okay. So, or this is just a name thing, install type versus install location. We can discuss this later if you want. It's not huge, but
Yeah, that feels like it could be I guess it's not a later thing because it is a config now, but I'm not totally grasping the implications of.
just, I like install location is a better name, but you used install type. I wondered if you had any.
Oh, are we? Oh, so okay.
And
It's just the name.
It's just the name, but I mean,
You were also talking about making it accept
is,
URL paths and stuff, and that's what I was confused about.
Well, it could be confused for that.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
But
That
I think
is,
not,
I
because the
like
base interview URL is kind of different thing than an install location.
it is, but in isolation, if you look at install location, that reads like it should be a URL. And you're right, when you look at everything all at once, base URL, it's like, oh, base interview URL, that's the thing I should be using. But like, I don't think we can rely on everyone always looking at all of them. And we have to think, oh, does this in isolation evoke the right thing, like idea that someone would put there, or the right content that someone would.
But it is also the right name for it. You know, like, is it in the playground or is it in the server? Where is it installed?
Well, type is too, like how are you installing it on the playground or on the server? That's like, they're both correct names, and it's a matter of like what has the correct connotations. And I think, in my opinion, type still has the better connotations, but.
How about where install?
I still think type is better. Like it's like where and like the thing you're talking about like where and like location and stuff like that. To me, that feels like something that has multiple answers as opposed to like an enum or something that has like 3 answers. Like it still reads like it should be a URL.
Okay. All right,
Like if you feel free to override me on this because you're like have at this point you've been doing more of the like hands-on work with it than I have. And if it reads better to you, then that's fine. Those are just
yeah,
my
I
notes.
mean, I'm
Wanna
asking about
override
it because I want input, not because,
Okay,
I can, definitely make that decision, but I think you have some
Cool.
good points and they're ones that I have in my brain as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So there was this bug. There were these bugs.
Which I saw.
Um,
I also saw Jonathan release, like in the new release, in the change log, he mentioned like refreshing into errors would sometimes happen. And I don't know if that's the same
what
thing.
does that mean?
I don't
Refreshing
know.
to
I hadn't looked
errors.
into the fix yet. But he
Okay,
just said
but
improved
you,
nascent web server reload capability. In the
did
change
you,
log, yeah, sorry.
did you get a chance to look at the bug itself or? It's
I haven't looked at
very
these yet.
mysterious.
I was gonna say I don't know if I will be able to understand them, but
It's very mysterious. It just says
I guess we got the logs now.
exit completed with 56. There was no error log for it before. And the Docker output does not help me.
And so 56 is going to be what supervisor exputs I think.
Supervisor X.
No, supervisor exits with. Like I have to double check, but
Okay,
when you start doc assemble through the Docker container, I'm checking that that is the case now, but I'm pretty sure yeah, supervisor D is the thing that log file is. And so if supervisor D exits with something, that's going to be the exit code, which is I think I saw you ask Jonathan this in Slack, and he was like, I don't know what that means. That's why, because he just uses supervisor and he doesn't have a good idea of what all of the exit codes are.
how do you know what the exit codes are?
I don't know what it means, but I know that it's coming from supervisor, and so we need to figure out where those
Okay.
are documented. I don't know where they're documented. There's one question that I can find that is like does not have an answer, but I can try to look through it if it's easily available. But otherwise, if it's not, then I don't think it's those rabbit holes go pretty far. And if it's yeah.
Okay, well,
And if it's not like extremely clear what's going on, the rabbit hole could go far, and we could just not even have enough information to figure out what's happening.
so we could try and include stuff from whatever file that is, stdr, in the artifacts when there's an error. Like, I don't know how we're going to catch this and actually see what it is. Right. So
Yeah,
we could catch it in our GitHub server.yaml instead of the action so that most people don't get it. But like, I don't know what to do about this and how to catch it. It just seems like,
like I said, I think we can catch.
you
think
know what
it's
I
just-
mean? Like, we're trying to avoid these kind of spurious errors. So if this
Yeah.
has its own spurious error, I just would love to not to have a way to deal with it or figure it out or something. This was 56, one was 52. A
Yeah.
previous one was 52. This one. So, and again, I didn't see any useful error here. Or useful output here,
Yeah, none of that
Um,
looks, it just says
just normal
terminated.
stuff.
It says terminated by sig term.
But it says that anyway, like all over the place, wherever.
Well, terminated by sig user one is a different thing. Sig term, I'm pretty sure is like control C.
Oh, really?
Supervisor could be doing a lot of weird things though, so maybe it does that by default. You're right.
Okay,
Not sure.
well,
I don't know.
we might want to make an issue with that or something.
That's fair. I mean, this is the everything is flaky everywhere. I guess it depends on whether your test server is more flaky than this stuff, but everything is at the Winwood cloud. I don't know. I don't have a good solution here.
So yes, okay. So those are the major things. I'm not saying don't review it. Oh, I see, Git Guardian. Did we do skip or did we do skip with like
I-
remembering it or did we just skip?
I just did it fail again? I
No,
said it,
no, I'm
I like marked
just
it as a,
asking you what you did. Did
I
you
went
decide on
in-
the skip with the remember this skip?
I didn't, I didn't do it through whatever. There was not like a skip option. I get email notifications for these things too, and so I went in through their dashboard and I said, this is a false positive. I said, this is a false positive, it's a test credential, and they were like, and it's like, okay, I have no idea how the GitHub action works. I reran it. If it's still failing, then I can look at it again, but
No, I'm wondering what it remembers about it, but that's okay.
I don't know. I don't think it's smart about things and like tries to learn it. I think it's just, it's stupid and we will
This
have to tell it to do
specific
things.
one, okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
it's passing down, so.
yeah, it is passing now. So that should be the major things that I saw as needing major discussion. I don't
Mhm.
mean I don't mean to say don't review. I'm just saying that those are the things that I saw as needing major discussion.
Okay,
Sorry, this has taken like half an hour or something.
that's fine.
Some pretty big changes.
We got a little extra time. And
That's
thanks
true.
for the
That's
morning
true.
going faster.
That's true.
Yeah, probably is a good time to move on to another topic though.
That's fine.
Okay. So, yeah.
Oh, I'm resharing everything.
Let me figure out why I kept turning my computer on and it wasn't turning on because my monitor was turned off. So let me work through that.
I mean, there are other issues to cover as well that we can if we're
Yeah, let's
running
move on
out
to
of
one of
things
the
to
other
cover, but
4 items on our agenda. That's okay.
sure.
Of the remaining things. PDF signing. Screening DA files from answer sets, monitoring. I copied these from last week's in the same order that they were in. Quentin, do you have a preference? Or like, were they in
Yeah.
priority order for you?
Not necessarily in
okay.
priority order, but I mean, the PDF signing one, just that's more of a question. I saw you open an issue with new thoughts on it, and I was wondering if that was driven by a new need or if it was more abstract, just you ran into it. I wanted to write it down.
Yeah, well, it's mostly, I think I had opened that, or I had started tracking this stuff a while back when we were talking to someone from California. I'm trying to pull up the actual.
I think it was the Utah
issue
folks,
right now.
actually.
Maybe it was Utah. Someone we were talking to was like, does it have PDF signing? And in response to that, like we added PDF-A, which was a lot easier, but like PDF signing we didn't have yet. And so I just kept a note. I don't, it wasn't someone who like actively started using DocAssemble, and so I haven't been treating it as like priority, but it is one of those things of like, maybe this is actually stopping people from using it, and I'm not super sure. So I've just been keeping track of it, and when I see things online, that's like, oh, this is a PDF signing tool and something I noted. I think at one point there was like one from Ruby that I added, and then there was another one from, or that was like, this should tell us technically how to do it. And then there was another one that was like, oh, here's just a literal Python library for this exact purpose. This is what we want. Of just noting, so when we do, like, if someone else, if a partner brings it up again, or like someone we're working with expresses it as something they want, or something that a court wants from them, we could start working on it. I don't have like specific steps or thoughts on it yet, but and I'm not treating it as a priority because there's other things I need to be doing. So
Okay. All right, cool. So yeah, that's good to know. I just was curious.
Yeah.
Because I could see it being relevant to an e-filing scenario, but wasn't sure. I assumed it wasn't required.
no, not required for e-filing. I put the link there. But yeah.
Great. All right. Let me see. Michelle, is your thought of number 5? I assume that you added the document bundle one. When you said I assume that's Michelle. Is there something actionable there, or is it just like a thought to just record that you still think maybe it should be different? Or is there a need?
Oh.
Is this going to be a
I
big
added this
discussion,
note. I
or
totally
is it,
forgot. I didn't-
yeah. Just
This
trying to
is,
size it right now.
sure, this is just that in the issue, the kind of conclusion you had written was not what I remembered of the conversation, and I did not know if it mattered and if we should continue that conversation. The
Conversation.
about the suffix to the bundle, the dash preview versus.
I figured it
nominated
was
versus-
that topic, but when was which discussion do you mean? Like, is this something from our deep dive? Is there an
This
issue?
is an
There's no
issue.
linked
There's
issue.
an issue for it. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't like the issue. I can try and find it. It's a closed issue. I can try and find it.
Okay, maybe I know what you're talking about. I think I just linked to the pull request where there was a discussion about it.
Yeah, but
No reason for the
I don't know where, like, I don't remember finding it articulated in that discussion either. Maybe it was and I missed it. But my discussion, I remembered discussing it at least verbally to say that I said you know, maybe ALKiln can just download all of them and just give them unique names. My introduction to it was, how should ALKiln handle the fact that there could be multiple files with the same name? And then y'all said, no, that should be a thing taken care of on the developer's side. No files should have non-unique names, which I took to assume developers should be able to give unique names to their files. So that was where that was coming from.
It's really hard to remember, like, the conversation from June of 2022. But I think the issue, I found the link to it, put it in there, was whether the feature was working the way that it was supposed to, or whether there was a bug. And I think it's working the way that we designed it. However, we ended up resolving the discussion. But if there's a need for file names somewhere else, like, that's That's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, is there a specific current?
Y'all expressed the need. I expressed Ale Kiln's need to handle files with the same file name. So if we want Ale Kiln to handle files with the same file name differently, then, you know, then that can be an Ale Kiln thing.
Did this come up because Caroline had an interview where it was appending preview to the end of the file name and she didn't want that, right? That was the specific prompt for this issue being opened, the number 709.
That may have prompted you looking into it, because that
It
was
may
around
have
the time that she
prompted
asked this.
looking into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a change to the behavior isn't needed to solve that problem. But I'm trying to figure out, is there like a use case that we have now? Because we can certainly add theoretical features, but I just want to think, if we already discussed this a year ago and come up with a solution, I'd want to keep it to a concrete thing if we can. Like if someone concretely
Well,
had a reason why this wasn't working.
the suggestion was that individual developers handle every file should have a unique name.
So I was gonna say, I feel like the way we implemented it and the way it is now feels like it's every unique files will have unique names. So if someone put the same file up multiple times, like if they put the preview version of their file on the page multiple times, it wouldn't have unique name, it'd have the same name. But if they put preview and like final on the same page, using that feature, the suffix to append, they would have different names. Does that?
Only allowed
does
for
that
two
sound
variations. I
wondering-
just want to clarify.
Only the fact that it's only the two variations is the.
I guess really one variation, but yeah, there's the
One
name you
variation.
specify, and then you can add a suffix for one specific scenario.
Okay.
Yeah, I think what it is that Michelle, is that we hadn't found any need for a developer to know this. That we thought it was only internal to Kiln.
Mhm.
So that's why we implemented it and I think we were also trying to think about backwards compatibility when we added it, so that we wouldn't disrupt the names of anybody's files that we thought they might be intentionally haven't chosen a name for. So like doing something like adding the suffix or adding the key that someone uses in an AL document, right, which is probably not meant to be publicly visible behavior, seemed really disruptive. So that's why we didn't just append every key to every file name.
But it
Yeah,
could be
choose
a
which one to
new
add it to.
keyword argument.
What's that?
It could be a new keyword argument. In the same way that people have multiple keys, right? I'd imagine that those would be multiple unique. I'm not saying let's change the keys. I'm just saying when you ask for an example for why people would have files with the same name, why would people have the same files with different keys but not different names? So
It only
what
matters for a
situation was
test, right?
that created for?
It only matters for a test because people they won't be automatically overwriting the file on their computer when they download it.
It is a minor I would say it's a minor UX issue, because if it is the same file, it will be like copy one, and then people will have something in copy one on their computer and they won't know which one is. They'll assume they're the exact same and they might not be.
Right. And if they're different, I mean, I guess.
So I was saying that it's not, yes, it's not only a test thing, but I haven't seen this in the wild yet, sort of thing. So.
Yeah, no, that is true. Like it will mean if there is descriptive value in the name of the key, that it won't be visible to distinguish the different variations of a file. People tend to, in our code, only use final and preview, but of course there's no reason they can't. But there are other ways for them to get unique file names while still taking advantage of the way that, like, they can still have one attachment block and have that be referenced in multiple AL documents, for example. Right, or one template that's used in multiple places. Sorry, that's my good. Adding all those random characters there. So I guess Yeah, I mean, like, okay, could there be a value in adding a variation for letting people change the name based on one key of an AL document when it's downloaded? And like flexibility is always great, but I don't see this as I'd want to see like actually have someone have that need and then figure out if there's a different solution that's better, because there are a lot of places the file naming is a little fragile, right? Like we're trying to avoid generating copies of the files every time. So when we can, we try to use the attachment block that was generated the first time without doing like a concatenation or anything. And that can make the file name not correct anymore. And so there's places where we're like handling 3 scenarios for where the file name can come from already. I'm not sure if we should just do this on a idea of like flexibility is good. That's all.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, files with different keys don't get generated differently.
Well, it's up to the author to decide like how they're generally people tend to use one attachment block when there's different keys, right? Because the point is the only change is the signature. So why make 2 different templates for that? But in theory, you could use 2 totally different templates. It just wouldn't make much sense, probably, for
think
most scenarios.
Maybe I misunderstood what you said, because you were saying that they wouldn't be in cache or something, they would be rebuilt. And maybe I misunderstood that.
I'm just saying like file names are not so trivial that I want to mess with them unless we know why. So like,
So maybe we could add that to the conversation, this conversation, to what we've concluded, just so it's clear in the future.
if you want to add a note that says like another reason is because messing with file names is hard and we don't have a specific use for this yet, that's fine. Yeah. I also don't want our issue backlog to grow such that it's impossible to manage. That was like another goal we talked about last week, which I still feel is correct for us to think about. I was looking around to see what other people do, and like I guess some people have a separate idea board from their issue list, but I feel like that's too cumbersome for our size project. I think if we got our issue list down to like 50, it would be easy to do like a quarterly review and make choices about new features. 100 is a little bit unwieldy, but we haven't gotten much above 110. So like, I think just trying to manage the issue list is okay. The way that we're trying now, we don't need a whole new solution, but if other people have ideas about that or thoughts, say this would be like this could be, for example, a new issue we add and say someday if we want to mess with file names, we could add more flexibility here. But
we could put a maybe revisit or whatever tag on it.
I think it should be a new issue then, because it describes a bug, which isn't a bug. It's really a feature that you're asking for, and we can link to the other issue in it. But we should probably close it immediately with the revisit tag, if that's okay with you, since we've decided it's a low priority feature. There is like an optimal number of parameters to have for a function too, right? Or a method, which I'm not sure. Once you get above like 5, there's an optimal number of parameters to have. So like complexity, configurability comes at a cost.
Yes,
so
for sure.
We could add a keyword argument that's totally new, but we can't add every keyword argument we think of probably. So even if it's a simple backwards compatible change that adds new options to developers, we still have to decide, is that worth even making the signature of the function more complicated to read? It's a very small cost, but it's real. Is it worth expanding the test coverage? And certainly, is it worth the engineering required to get it to actually work correctly in all the different paths that are possible? So mean, the solution I would offer to a developer now would be just to make 2 AL documents. Even if they're similar templates, they can avoid a lot of the work from similar templates without having to have the flexibility be an AL document.
The solution would be to rename their file or something. Sorry, I missed that last part.
They could still use one template and use different AL documents, because AL documents really just a container for it points to the template block, right? And the template file. So you don't really need to control those things as parameters to the download generating option.
Yes. Just a second.
Not different bundles, different AL documents. Fix that.
Say that again. AL document.
I changed that.
Okay.
I mean, if you feel like this is something we need to think about
I
soon,
don't think it's
you don't have to
urgent.
necessarily close it right away.
I don't think it's urgent. I just
yeah.
was reading over stuff and I was like, wait, this is not the problem I remember representing. That's all. And that it might become an issue. ALKiln also has some complexity with downloading files. So, you know, it's complexity on one end or the other, which again, I was also willing to handle in ALKiln, but this is also, they have an alternative and that's good to know. So if there's a way to handle that complexity somewhere, that's great. I had perhaps misunderstood all the reasons for that decision, and I think they had not been recorded. And it's good to capture them here.
Okay, no, that's good. That was a good to close the loop on it. In that case.
Okay.
The monitoring rights. Do you want to maybe, basically our question is, do we want to onboard a new monitoring tool, or do we want to do custom coding? I'm looking at issue number 4 on the agenda. Do you want to let us take a look at your current code and walk us through it a little bit, maybe to help inform us better? I doubt anyone's ready today with research to say how much work it will be to implement centralized logging or any other kind of monitoring solutions we might eventually want.
Yeah,
we can look at the cost of your code, maybe.
I have 2 or 3 tabs open with that and not prioritizing looking into it anymore. But yeah, the existing code we have is not very long. It's these 10 lines of Python. And it's in this repo AL actions. I have a few actions here. One is the publishing one that we use to publish all our stuff to PyPy. One is Python tests to just run the Python tests for each thing. They're all consolidated, so we don't have to have 12 lines of GitHub actions in all of our repos. It's just 1 line. But Hall Monitor is the one that actually monitors the tests, or monitors the DocAssemble interviews. And all it is beautiful soup BS4 calls the server URL /list, gets all the HTML from it, finds links on the specific list page, which, for example, looks like this. And so every link that's on this page is going to have something that looks like it's just going to be a link. And if it's styled, or if it has a separate DA air style on it, then it shows up as red. Can I add this style? I know class. I think it's DA. It is not DA air. It's something else. Oh, interview has air. Just so we can see what it looks like. Yeah, so if it has the style DA interview has air, it shows up red, which is just what DocAssemble does when the interview cannot load. And it just looks to see if any of those links have that class. So a little bit implementation specific to DocAssemble, but it's out of the box and it's not like I can't imagine. It doesn't feel like that would change without there being another large change to DocAssemble's sort of interface. And that's all it is. The rest of this is just if there's any failed links, exit. Otherwise, print that it's okay. So it's like a really short Python code. It's not like super customizable yet. And then the thing that I was considering adding, because GitHub Actions is, it's honestly great for these little sort of things, and it's just a little difficult to get notifications out. The only thing I would add would be there are other actions that let you send things with SendGrid, and it would just be like run this other action, or it would be like uses this other action to like send an error saying something's wrong with this server. With like we have to set up, and we just have to set up the SendGrid secrets in GitHub. And it would be if failure or something like that. So it wouldn't be too much, but like it is one of those, we add one thing, we start adding a lot more. It could get complex eventually. I still think it's dead simple right now. And the only downside is just the notifications. And if we're okay with only having one person be notified, then when I leave, then I can make sure that one of us gets, or like one of like Quentin or David, someone who is okay with being getting error notifications, y'all can get the error.
Okay, yeah, I think I misunderstood when you were asking about it before, because I thought this makes sense to be something we build because it's specific to how DocAssemble interviews work. We probably could tweak a generic monitoring tool to do that. But I was thinking when you said, this is my way of monitoring when the test server fails because it's out of disk space, I didn't realize it was just checking, just do all the interviews work, which makes sense.
No, yeah. And and test server fails more often than not because it's getting restarted a lot. And I just, if I get that email, I go to apps test. And if for some reason it's still not loading the like 10 minutes later that I see it, and I know that is something is more wrong with the server, then that's all it is. I was gonna say for completion, there is another like 10 lines of Python, essentially a very similar thing, but it's just doing this for the e-file server and the e-file server test. This is the exact same code that I just didn't refactor as nicely. Or these two sections are the same code. It's just doing it with test and e-file. And it's doing a similar thing of just making sure it can get, if it can call the about page and the about page returns fine, then we know that the server is up and running. And I just have a similar thing there for completion.
Is this different from what Uptime Robot would do?
This is probably not too different than Uptime Robot. It does check one thing. It checks if like version is actually in the response that it gets, but it's not super different, no.
That might be a paid feature, but usually these monitoring tools do let you check for certain strings in response.
Okay.
Like a grep, basically. Yeah, there's a keyword monitor. Let's see. It looks like it's not a paid feature on Uptime Robot. It's part of the free tier.
Cool.
So I would suggest maybe we remove this test and put it on Uptime Robot.
That's
just
fair.
It's less code for us to maintain. I think the hall monitor maybe could be squeezed into Uptime Robot because I don't know if you can have it follow links. I don't think it does.
So it doesn't have to follow the link. It's just checking for the class.
No, I understand how we're doing it now, but we could have it follow the links. And I think it returns error code. It doesn't return a 200. Okay, it's like 400 or 500 error.
Okay.
There's also health
right.
check. There's also health check that.
Health check is just for the server, I think, right?
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah,
sorry. I don't.
Sorry, yeah, that was something that I know I know Jonathan had mentioned to you, but I think that was in the context of just if the server is up and running.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah, that special URL that Jonathan has for, and we want to know, does this interview break? Did this interview break? You upgraded the server. Maybe you didn't check to see every interview is working.
Yeah.
The hall monitor was meant to let us see.
Yeah.
all the interviews still work. At least they
And
can
it-
open the first
And it
page.
does that great. The few times that interviews have broken, it also tells me that very quickly. And so like, that's great.
Okay.
So,
That's good.
but that's fair. Yeah, that's fair. My default is to do short 5-line scripts like this because it's easier for me. And again, I don't actually know if our uptime robot stuff is in Bitwarden / like if we have easily accessible things or easily accessible
Yeah.
like monitoring stuff like this, but we are suggesting other people use Uptime Robot. And it's probably, it would be easier for other people to set those up than it would be for GitHub Actions likely, so. I'm
There
okay with
tend to
moving
be, like,
more stuff to that.
These tools like Uptime Robot, where like the best one that's free, the tier of services that are free changes over time. So like I didn't use
Yeah.
this tool 5 years ago. I used a different one.
Mhm.
We use System Center, Configuration Manager, and Operations Manager at GBLS. Like, so I switched from free stuff to the big enterprise tool, which is way more than we need.
Okay.
Anyway, like, yeah, but there's so many products like this because it's a very simple thing to stand up. There
Yeah.
are open source ones if we wanted to self-host that exist. You then at least need one more free tool to monitor your things. You don't want it
Yeah,
to not give you alerts because it failed
yeah.
if you're running it yourself.
I do think that whatever we should. Whatever we recommend other people use, I think we should use, and that's just more of, I'm bad and I don't know Uptime Robot. I don't know a bunch about it by default, and so I just don't use it as much, and I should. Like if we're suggesting other people use it, I should actually know it and use it as well. I just have, so.
And
I'm
I don't.
okay with
It
moving.
would not
forward.
currently replace the hall monitor. Like maybe we could switch to
Yeah.
another free tool that would, but I don't think that's worth it because we might expand what it does. But the basic is this server online. We probably shouldn't have any GitHub workflow just because the extra maintenance hassle there.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think I'm convinced that this does not merit us implementing centralized logging to resolve, although that might be something we think about.
Well,
Some
I was
of our
gonna say
stuff.
there is, because this is just like uptime monitoring. I think we had talked about, which maybe this is not what you had intended, but I think at one point there is more stuff that I am doing or have done for the proxy server.
Okay.
And given that, and I don't know what we think is the best option there, and that might be a different discussion because it's a much bigger, what do we do with the proxy server discussion. But right now I have set up essentially already, like it's if it gets if any errors happen with log error, it like I have it set up to email someone to just say, oh hey, this error happened, go check the server, and I have it set up so it emails me. And some of them are superfluous because those errors happen when someone tries to log in or like log in with an email that doesn't exist, like Tyler sends us back a thing and we just spit out an error. And so some of them are superfluous, but like it works pretty well other than that. But that's a separate thing of like, it's a bit more in-depth and more integrated than just like this really simple script that we can get rid of.
Mhm.
But there's also the open question of we generate a lot of logs there, and some of them like people need to use if they're doing that. Like, should we set up some better login monitoring, whatever, for people to use? How does that work? What do we want to do there? If it takes a lot of extra integration, it probably won't get done. But if it's something that we can just say, like, we can set up to, instead of writing this log to a file, we just send it as a request somewhere. What do we do? That might be a completely different thing that we don't spend a ton of time on now, but we can put it for next week's deep dive.
Well, we should think about centralized logging then. It sounds like we're going to continue to have those needs. And what you're describing in terms of like the things you're getting alerted for right now,
Mhm.
like would be, you'd want a centralized dashboard to be able to monitor different things, different metrics related to servers to make sure they're in good health and have like maybe a routine for checking them regularly. So Splunk is a very popular tool for that. That is an enterprise expensive tool, but it has a lot of market share. I think they may offer some things free to nonprofits. it is worth finding out if we could use it. There are alternatives to it, like Graylog, I believe is an open source alternative.
Mhm.
Let me just take a look at this. It's a little bit more of a seam, like for like getting security alerts, but I think you can use it for various kinds of things, including the kinds of errors that you're describing.
Mhm.
And it looks like it's also supported by enterprise, so maybe there's some options there. Let me just see their pricing. I don't have it on their website, which is usually a bad sign.
Yeah.
Okay. But I see that they've relicensed it. It used to be GPL, but now it's server side public license. I think that's probably something like GPL v4 or v3. I mean, where it's, or you have to users count as people who are viewing your site, not just people install the code. So if you change it, at least the change, that's not a problem for us.
Oh, okay.
I think I kind of like the idea of seeing if we could get a tool like Splunk for free, just because it's the best of breed and we don't have a lot of management time to implement things. But
Mhm.
and there may be new tools that I don't know about, because a lot of my information when I was looking into this is based on when I was at GBLS at least 3 years ago, and probably I did the research earlier.
Yeah.
I guess if we just Googled centralized logging tool. There's an AWS tool for it, apparently.
Yeah, this is all stuff that we've been more tightly tied to AWS, honestly. A lot of the proxy server stuff.
You can have user-defined format. So the question is like, will their AWS log server understand the logs we have, or do we have to customize the log format for us to be able to get the alerts we want? You can spend a ton of time on.
We can customize the log format. That is a thing I've already done.
Oh, you're saying we change our log, what we log. I'm saying we'd have to like maintain a definition of the log to tell the AWS tool to understand it. So it may not matter. Like we may not be able to change our log to the format it already knows, no matter what.
Oh.
But it might be possible. I'm not sure. I mean, I could see investing a lot of time in this. It's probably going to have a low payoff, but it's something we should think about for our three-year timeline if we're going to be hosting stuff for other people.
Yeah.
Becomes more important to do. And Graylog gets a lot of seems to get a lot of love, actually. Maybe Splunk is something a little different than just centralized logging. It's not even on this list. I guess it's not an open source tool. That's why. All right, I'm just going to share. Sorry. I'm not.
I was gonna say,
I'll put it into the. I mean, I would say like if we don't have to host it and we can pay for it instead, it should probably fit in the budget of whatever grants we have coming up, is my guess. So we should avoid self-hosting.
okay.
In terms of this specific question, like whether you should add SendGrid integration for the hall monitor, I'd say probably yes. I think we really only eliminated the monitoring for the log server, proxy server being up or not. Which
yes, yeah.
Everything else is more complicated. And then the other stuff, keep in mind, like, okay, should we do this management in the tool itself, or would it be better to just send the logs and have the alerting happen in consumption of multiple logs? That's like what you do with centralized logging. I would say
Yeah.
probably that's where we should move. So like the next time you add a complicated alert to a feature, we should think about it, whether we can move the logic to a centralized place that is for all of the logging we do instead of just the one project that you wanted to get alert.
Yeah, and that's fair. Cool. Right, my PDF is up there, and I guess that feels like it should clearly be an uptime robot thing, probably, right?
Yeah, I added my own uptime robot for it, and I think
Cool.
I just wanted to also get alerts to Suffolk Lit Lab at suffolk.edu and
Yeah,
couldn't get the password for it. So I think that's fixed now. I just haven't gone into edit. I have my own uptime robot,
mhm.
which that's the one thing like we can all add our own list. I'd like to think about a tool like the one that I'm using in my consulting now as being another thing that the lab should consider using,
Okay.
which has password management and documentation built into it. And the idea here is internal.
Yeah.
And I'll try to bring that up on Wednesday, I guess, to see if we think there's budget for it. So we could roll our own again, but like with maybe like some wiki tool that we just make available to us internally, but you lose a lot of time and you lose data, right? Like we're maintaining 3 to 5 servers. We have like 5 servers now, don't we? That each have data about them that is not stored in the right place.
Yeah.
Like if we had to rebuild any of those servers, we don't have a good way to know where do we have that information, and that it's stored securely because it has API keys. We can't just put it on a random file system. It may be worth paying for a tool that is built for that purpose. And then that would let us get rid of Bitwarden, actually, because at least this one, Hoodoo, that I've used, the purpose is to like let you share. It has a feature to let you a password vault built into it.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit less convenient than Bitwarden, but I think that's okay. A little bit of friction that comes with it is okay for the fact that everything's in one place. And that it's a proper hierarchical platform, because we could start storing notes in Bitwarden if we wanted. Like that's a secure place to store notes, but to be able to see what are all of the servers that I have for Michigan that I have access to or help set up, right? Like that it does not work in Bitwarden. You can use folders, but that's not, it's not really, it's not as flexible.
No, yeah. I have a little bit of that. One of our Tyler keys is Bitburden, but it's like a note, and I just base 64 the like key itself. So
Well, putting
it's
in
not great, but like having an actual thing would be better. So
yeah.
okay.
Okay.
the only thing that is next is screening DA files from answer sets, if we still have time for that.
I'm okay. I mean, we block off till 12:30 for these meetings.
And we.
So I'm okay.
Early, so, okay, that's fair.
Started early though, so if people would rather have the time back, that's okay too.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you were saying we're continuing is fine, so we can.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just say one more thing for Hoodoo, just to say Hoodoo can handle passwords, monitoring, at least for uptime. And it also handles documentation. So it checks two boxes that we have now in disparate tools and centralizes them. And it adds a feature we don't have right now, which is a place to document our processes and configurations for systems.
That's true. That would be really nice.
I wouldn't mind an open source tool that did the same thing, but I think I did a fair amount of research and it seemed like it was the best one. And
yeah,
I'm self-hosting it to save money, but I still find it's worth paying for not losing stuff. Okay, so I saved the screening DA files one for last because be nice if we could solve it on the call, but I'm skeptical. Maybe because I think I'm running into very specific bugs, not conceptual issues, but I'll try to walk through what I was doing anyway. So I've linked to the branch where my latest code. That's helpful because now I can remember what branch it's on. Let me share screen here. That's not a link to the issue, which there is an issue for this, but it's basically when someone tries to load an answer file that had signatures in it after 3 months have passed, they find that it errors out.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that's impossible because we're screening DA files out of the saving and loading of answer sets. And I found out we're only doing that if they are stored at the top level of the interview answers. If that makes sense. So like if you create a DA file object and that is not an attribute of another object or in a list, it gets removed. But if it is either an attribute or in a list, and even one level down, it does not get removed. So what I was finding is that the ways that should make sense to be able to iterate over all of the answers in the interview and screen out the ones that have DA files did not work well because DocAssemble overrides the get attribute method and causes an attribute error when you check get attribute on a thing that's not defined, which is the total opposite of what it's meant to do. But I don't know if that's a feature you can change easily. I've run into this before, but it didn't. I could work around it. I'm not sure. Okay, let me just check out this branch. Let's call the answer set. So the first version of this code that handled screening out the DA files was kind of broken, or it was just a limited hack. It only checked for things at the top level where I don't really expect a lot of files to get saved. This specific problem someone ran into was with signatures, which are definitely the most common kind of file to get saved in a session. New code not in here, or did I delete? I have to remember where I left off this
It
branch.
looked like you had deleted something. You had deleted filter file like, and replaced it with a while loop. A recursive while loop, I assume, but I'm not super sure.
Yeah. So the filter method is something I added and then removed because I was finding it wasn't working right. But this still seems to be like causing screens to show up when they weren't supposed to.
Hmm. And I guess the other thing I'm confused about is we're filtering. This is on the, sorry, is this on the save side? We're trying to filter it out, right? Or are we filtering it on the load side?
The same code gets called both
Okay,
places. So we filter it on the save and the load side.
okay. I'm mostly confused on, because it seems like it's operated on like actual Docassemble Python stuff, right?
It is, yeah.
As opposed to the JSON.
Correct, because we can't just assume the session can store more than is representable in JSON. And the answer set is not a JSON object. It is,
JSON?
no, it's a session. It's a full Docassemble session.
Oh, okay. I was we can export answer sets and that's JSON, right?
Yes,
Okay, I think I was just confused there. Okay.
yeah. If it were just filtering on the JSON, I guess we don't have to worry about the get attribute anymore, right? That's easier.
Yes, yeah, that was my thought. But if we're trying to do something else, that is that's fair.
I was running into a couple of specific bugs, which is like why this may or may not be good to discuss on a call like this, but essentially, I think it does boil down to the fact that how get attribute behaves. Even though this didn't seem like it should trigger anything because I'm just looking for the attributes that are actually in the object, still seem to be triggering screens to show up, like defining all of the different empty attribute. So I think the problem is, okay, I might just be able to keep working through this version of the code to figure out how to avoid it triggering certain objects. So like we have all these predefined objects that are part of a person, like the address object and the previous address object and so on, right? There's like a few variations of that. We have previous names as a list as well. We pre-create those attributes. We initialize those for any AL individual. And iterating through those seem to trigger questions asking about the value of those items. Even though I don't think the code should do that, I think it was probably tied to how get attribute works. Maybe it tries to actually render the code and I just have to hook into that somehow to stop that from happening. The question is like, should I keep going down this road of trying to handle all the general scenarios and working out the bugs and basically caused by the way Docassemble handles exceptions to define things? Or the other thing to do would just be to look, okay, are there any people list in the interview? If so, go through, use Docassemble's defined and delete all of the people, the people's signatures, to specifically look for that one attribute, which is 99% of the problem.
Yeah, I feel like it could pop up elsewhere, but I guess if the hacky thing works, then the hacky thing works.
I also had to do this, making a copy, I think, which wasn't in the original code. But in order if we're going to start deleting stuff, I feel like that's the only option.
Yes, yeah.
So this isn't recursive, by the way. It's we're building a queue, and then we're just processing the items in the queue. One at a time.
Okay, okay.
I find like you get stack error issues pretty quickly with DocAssemble. Already has a pretty deep stack, so if you try to do recursive calls, it can break things.
That's right.
So I know this is a hard one to do on a deep dive without
Yeah,
having a chance to really
mostly just
inspect
'cause
the
I
code for a
don't-
while.
Yeah, I don't have a good idea of like what sessions even does so far. And so trying to like read through a lot of this, like going slow and not super sure what all is happening. I also don't know if I'd have a lot of ideas of things you haven't already thought of, sort of stuff, but
Yeah. I guess the only thing I can think of is, do we want to try to troubleshoot this more? But it's hard for you to know that until you've seen if the code is close to working or not.
yeah.
Versus how do we feel about just deleting signatures of people and not other kinds of files? Because the problem is, like, I want to do, you can't just say have this object in the session except for these attributes of the object. Once you start looking at attributes, the simple ways of iterating through a list and say, okay, just save these variables, stop working. That's why we
Yes,
make a copy of the whole list now, which adds overhead. No matter what we do to get,
We'll have to make a copy of it.
we'll need to make a copy of the list. Yeah, at least we could filter. This is what I'm doing here. I filter through the list first before I iterate over it, at least.
Yeah,
But we still need a copy of everything.
Yes, we could.
Another naive method was to like try to redefine new objects for each one, but then that failed because of the way DocAssemble's intrinsic names work.
Mhm.
So you can't just use the class constructor to build the new object if you run into an object. You were gonna ask something, sorry, Bryce.
I was gonna say, it looks like we are still copying before we
Yeah,
filter, right?
we have
Like
to
we
do that, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not checking the things that we just already know we're gonna skip. They're in this filter here. There's like names we just know we'd never want to save.
Okay. What does a copy to all variables or make copy to all variables do internally? Like, how is that
into
different
a s-
than? Like,
oh.
how could we not do that outside of the copy? I'm hyper focusing on the performance stuff, which is probably not super helpful, but
Yeah, no, I don't think there's. So what does this line do here? It makes a copy of it, which is a deep copy, rather than just being object references to the existing objects. Because if we're going to start mutating those objects by deleting them or taking items out of the list, we can't just have a shallow copy or a
yeah,
reference.
but we could do that on only the things we know we're filtering, right? We could do, yeah, so it's copy dot decopy pickable object of the entire user dict. We could just call that on all of ours after we filter stuff, right?
We could try
I
to
don't know how many-
reproduce what the all variables function does. Is that what you're saying? And then
Yes.
just put the filtering there.
Yes.
Yeah. We could say
I don't
all
know if I don't know
variables,
if that
make
would skip
make
it.
our own copy of it and put like a filter these things in there and then move this logic there. That's another, I did consider that. That's another option.
Yeah, I don't know if it's actually worthwhile or like would filter out enough or actually make it more performant, but you're right, copying an entire thing maybe copying the entire thing is not as bad as I'm thinking, but I don't know.
It's not going into this, it's because it's happening in the module. It's not going into the user dict, at least, that copy. So we don't have to worry about cleaning it up from there. Let me just check something. I guess it's worth seeing what the code is for all variables and how complicated it is.
It's not, sorry, I have it up. It's not very complicated. It's 10, 15 lines.
Well, maybe putting the filtering there is better because it actually would let us maybe have more control over these things. Anyway.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to delete, like trying to process a list after it's already built is a lot more annoying.
Yeah. All right, isn't that in chat? Here, let's see. It's not-
Oh, okay.
But,
I still
it's
like,
just
oh,
in
you
chat.
put the whole,
Yeah, it was like
all right.
in chat. I was like, why did I do that?
That's okay. This VS Code is a little slow, but still, I think it's probably gonna be helpful to see it on screen. It's been getting annoyingly slower for me running from, I don't know if I maybe did something with my WSL install that I have to improve. Oh, I lost Michelle. Did she show signing off? Oh yeah, she did.
Yeah, she did say she had. Yeah.
Is this the all block? Yeah. Why are we not?
Why? Oh, it's in functions. If the search is
It's
not.
exported from util. Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Okay, it's already the thing I had been last. Oh, well, this is, I mean, could we look into this in a useful way to make it filter stuff? We'd not really. All it does is return a deep copy of the pickable object. So I guess we could filter, replace the pickable objects method, I guess would be really what we want. Okay, well, this is interesting because but this is top level. There's no recursion.
Mhm.
I'm not really seeing a place where we're doing it here would actually end up saving us time. I take it back, unless you see something I'm missing. So it does end up maybe copying some objects we don't really need to have in memory.
Yes.
So I suppose we could remove that one dictionary comprehension here.
Yeah, which is I don't like again. I was saying I don't know if that's worthwhile, but like I don't know how big the interviews are
Really,
talking.
the changes we need to make aren't like built into any of the existing functions that I see.
Okay.
Can you? So this pickable objects is not very sophisticated. I mean, it does not pickle the files already, I guess, but we don't want to pickle the actual file object difference.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm trying to just think through my own internal process. Should I pivot? I spent a couple hours on this. Should I pivot and just say, let's filter out signatures because those are breaking people's productions? Because I could just hard code that. Should we try to look at whether doc symbol really needs get attribute to work the way it does?
This is what I was trying to look that up, but I couldn't figure out like where it was redefining it.
It's
Was it a part of doc? Is it a part of DA object?
I think it's part of DA object. Mm,
We could probably get around it. So it looks like it's doing. Yeah, could we just do object dot get attribute or underscore get attribute? Underscore self, whatever we're trying to do instead of Python's thing.
Okay.
Because that's how it is. I'm assuming that's how it's circumnavigating everything.
Yeah, I guess you're right. We should be able to. Wait, why is object dot get? Is this object? Is this the object base class? Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Wait, this one's not overridden? That's a little confusing.
Well, I
'Cause
don't
it's-
think that, well,
is that-
that's not overridden. It's just, from my understanding, get attribute. I'd have to check Python's first, which I don't have easily set up, but from my understanding, like the get attribute function just like inspects the object to see if it's defined to get attribute and then calls that. And if it's not, it probably goes to object.get attribute.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that you were convinced by the way, I don't know, I'm just formally applied. You're gonna be with, it's part of your deed that it's your own.
Why is it like, okay, every time that you refer to an attribute, it triggers an exception? That seems so dumb.
I have no idea how doc symbol works, and this is sort of the black magic parts that I haven't looked into as much. I don't. If it's working, it's working, but we can also go around it if it's not working in this case.
Yeah, no,
And
obviously
that's
in this
definitely
case,
what we
we
do.
don't want to change it ever. We don't want to raise any exceptions when we're iterating over just the list of
Yeah.
variables. Okay, so I think you're right. We just need to import object.
Sorry, that's just me knowing that, trying to understand what Jonathan is trying to do here is
So it's like,
probably a deep rabbit hole.
Okay, that's fair. Just confused why that would always need to trigger an exception. Feels like that's something that could be optimized. Because anytime you reference an attribute of an object, it's either defined, in which case you should just return the value.
Mhm.
And if it's not defined, you would want to trigger an exception. I guess there's just no way to find out if it's defined or not. Hold on, let me just grab this call. Okay, I'm gonna go let my kid in, but I'll be right back.
Cool, no issue.
All right. Okay, well, let me try. I think that we could try this. We just never, yeah. We just want to never use. Yeah, that should be the same otherwise, right?
Yeah.
That's the only call to get attribute. Other thing that was happening is like it didn't seem to actually save everything that I thought it should. Like it basically seemed to be deleting lists altogether instead of. Let me try this again. Let's see what happens. 'Cause I don't think this call would have caused the behavior of not saving some things. But let me try. I don't even care that much about the lists, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it could be. Lists are people lists will be considered lists, right?
Right. No, you're right. I need to do something with them, but could be after they get expanded. Right. You have to go, let me know. This is veering into, well, this is the deep part of the deep, I guess.
Yeah.
Watching somebody else code in real time.
Okay.
Likely timeout. This has gotten pretty big, I think. What? 1.3 gigabytes.
Something's up.
Because I have the VM in there. I should move the VM.
Oh.
So I was trying to upload the VM to. Okay. What do you do for that?
You have DA for DA install.
Yeah.
I have my VMs in a different folder, but I also have a separate copy of DA install that I hard coded that to avoid it. I have considered trying to push it upstream, but
If you, it would be really nice. We could have
I think the hesitancy is because I'm like, well, what it should really do is just not push anything that's in like the git ignore. But to do that, you'd have to read the git ignore and parse it, and I just haven't had time to actually try and do that. But I have added like several other things that have been blockers, but this one has not been like a blocker for me. So,
Okay.
but yeah,
Yeah.
it is annoying.
Well, trying to remember which virtual environment for which package if it's not in the folder, what do you do? Do you just remember it?
I have like one virtual environment for like everything for the lit lab.
Oh, that works. I guess that I
Which is-
probably could get away
yeah.
with that too. I thought I had made a test file just for this thing. Make a new one. See if this is enough to reproduce it. I need a couple more screens. Oh, okay. I renamed one instead of, that's okay. Okay. So I now want to save an answer set. Oh, see, this should not be happening. So now it's iterating, it's triggering the gathered method of the list. This should just be totally leaving the list alone. Okay, I guess I got to do. I changed this to dot elements. That's the problem. All right, let me move that VM somewhere else. Maybe I just had to look at the code again with somebody else. Pair programming is useful. Okay, and now it shouldn't take us long to install. I also hadn't checked to figure out why it was causing a 504 gateway timeout every time. Not totally surprised that uploading 1.3 gigs cost a timeout.
Yes. little good old fashioned screen with nothing but air on it.
So with like a negative margin apparently. But that's just because of
I
the
could
real.
just- Yeah. I have a negative margin, or I think it's just 0 margin, but no CSS.
Oh, that's possible. Yeah, I'm seeing a green box there, but it's just because it's Zoom telling me that I'm sharing my screen.
Okay.
Yeah. You probably do you see the full E? I can't see the E.
I can't see the full yeah.
Okay, well now it's telling me it's saved. Okay, well that's good. Let me try this again. That time it didn't need to anymore iterate over the list. Which of course, 4-item, that's another thing that gets intercepted by doc assemble objects.
Mhm.
Okay, I think maybe those two things were enough to fix it. If that's the case, then this is done. Okay. Let's do a new save and run. And what I'm expecting to see is that the random variable will be predefined. The list of users will be predefined, and all that I need to do is provide a signature. Well, it did load everything, but didn't filter anything. Apparently. It's really a pain to try to figure out what's being stored with this.
Yeah.
Because yeah, like you can't easily inspect in the module. Maybe there's some ways if I hard code my tests. Okay, so signature is saved in there. So why is that not getting caught?
You're only storing the name of the attribute as the key in the items to check. I think it needs to be value or like key dot attribute, maybe.
Let me check here. Okay, so let me see.
Like delete all vars key might not be working if it's just getting like the name of the previous parent attribute and not everything else above it, right?
Good point. Okay. If the value is okay, so I'm going to actually appending a tuple here of the attribute and its value. And here I'm checking to see if that tuple is file like, which it's not, because it's okay. That's a problem here. This has to be generalized. But I'm not actually going to necessarily be running into this test. But I am skipping it because I need to handle the situation where it's a tuple. Okay. Yeah, this is just wrong. All right. Okay, if it's a list set or DA object, I don't want to append a tuple of the key. I just need the value to be stored there, right?
Well, you're always assuming it has a key, right? Like it needs some key. It would be key.
No, because this is going to be a list. Once I copy it, it's going to be pointer. It's going to be references to the objects. So if it's a top level object
Mhm.
that is a DA file, we're going to delete that from
Yes.
all vars. If it's not a top level object, we need to delete an attribute or an item from a list. We're not going to ever delete the full object. So I don't need the key anymore, right? Because I'm going to be deleting. It's going to be a DA object with no attributes if all of the attributes are DA files, but it will still remain otherwise. Right? Well, let me think about this.
This isn't, but that's not how this is set up. Because items, you add it to items to check, and then you eventually will come back and it'll pop it off, and you will assume it has a key, and then you'll always try to call it at the top level. So do you maybe you just
The
I think
object
that
itself
three
won't be a DA
sorry,
file in this case. See?
935 isn't just doing top level stuff like you think it is. It's every object that gets put there, right? Including
Right.
objects that are just attributes of other objects,
Correct.
which means those objects are not in all vars. They're attributes of other objects,
Correct.
so they're not getting deleted. Right?
Right.
Am I missing that?
They're never going to get deleted. This test is never going to be run except on top level items. It'll never be true.
No, it gets run on everything that gets
Right.
added.
It'll never be true though, because we're already deleting it here in these two conditions.
Oh, okay.
So let's say this turns out to be a DA object.
Oh, I missed that.
If the
Okay, I
attribute is
missed
itself a
that.
DA object, we already have deleted it if it's a file, DA file.
Okay, I missed that part.
So yeah, we don't wait to handle it till we go back through the list. All right, well, let's just think that through. So we have our people list.
We aren't actually, well, I guess we're not adding it to, okay, never mind.
We iterate through items to check. It doesn't pass this test because it's a list. We fall down to this here.
Yeah,
So we go through all the items in the list. It's not going to be itself a DA file. So we've just had we run into this condition, right?
we aren't deleting it. Oh, yeah, so 950, it's not getting deleted, it's just, we're skipping it, and we aren't adding, if it is a file like down here, we're skipping it, but we aren't deleting it.
Correct. We replace the new elements. We replace the object's elements attribute with a subset of the list. Okay.
Is that, I guess that's enough.
If it is, it should. Yeah, because we're mutating the actual object because we can, because it's a copy. All right, if it's in, we're gonna run into this line here, right? We're following through for our first person is a DA object.
Mhm.
So now it becomes an item to check. All right, we go back to our loop. We run it through. We run into this catch, our DA object that we're checking. We're going to look and see if that object itself is file-like. If it is, we delete it. So we should, this append never mattered. for what was broken. Am I right? Because we were never going to, we didn't hit this condition to add it to the list of items to check. We were looking at this one. Oh, this is also a tuple though. So this is just wrong. Why
I'm
is
so confused because it needs to be a tuple.
don't-
933 assumes it's a tuple and it's gonna, you're gonna get like a tuple cannot expand to, or cannot like unpack or something like that.
Oh, okay. Okay, maybe you're right. All right, because it's
You do need the
items.
none
I
there.
forgot items to check is a list of items. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. Okay, so it's a meaningless, unused. So I should just make it none.
Yeah, start adding brain statements.
So this must not be working correctly.
Yeah.
And now we're going over, but so we'll just see. And I have a 1 o'clock, but
Okay.
Trying to see if there's a difference. Does it work? Does that first condition even work? That's what I'm going to try to figure out. Could we remove the me's objects signature or not? No. Problem is like when you like copy stuff across a session, that's why we're trying to remove files. Like in theory, like maybe we could just try to fix it so that files can be loaded,
Mhm.
but you basically have to set attributes of each file, which has the same issue of iterating over every file in order to allow them to be read from a different session.
Mom,
So
Mom.
okay, well, let's look at this for a second. So this is not doing what it's supposed to do. What is wrong with this? I know that file like, well, let's try. Let's see, actually. That signature is kind of the easiest way.
Yeah, so do you want?
It looks now like it hasn't even loaded. Hasn't saved that session. It's weird. I think I didn't save the answer set, did I? That's the problem.
Oh,
I think maybe
I didn't listen to it.
maybe I did. Can't remember. Well, I guess this is telling me. Wait a second.
Hey Siri.
Did we change it? Did we actually change this other than adding comments? So I didn't upload it after. I'm just realizing that too.
We changed the none to, or the like attribute to, or ATTR to none, but like we were saying, I don't think that would have affected.
Because it's just discarding it. It's not only matters if we fall into this level where the actual
Yes.
object we added is itself
Yeah,
a file. Okay, so this is just to see. Is file like work, I guess, maybe? That's what we're checking with this.
yeah. Yeah, so
Okay, and it is,
looks like it's fine.
but it doesn't work when it's an attribute. Or at least this check isn't working.
Mhm.
So let me see. Maybe this dir is not doing what we think it does.
That could be it.
Hmm.
I don't think that's.
What does dir end up calling?
I think it's
Attribute list.
__ dir.
Yeah. Where is self.attribute list?
It's only getting set an initialized attribute and a re-initialized attribute.
Why? Okay, so reading a DA object doesn't actually show you the attributes of it other than those that were set in the dot using block, it seems, right?
I guess so, yeah.
Why?
Ah,
Okay.
Jesus.
So I need to figure
So-
out the equivalent of object dot attribute for overriding of dir. That's the problem.
Let me
Okay.
just check like a local Python, because I'm pretty sure object __ dir should do the same thing. But we should check.
No, because it's actually, this is a redefining dir. See?
Well, what if we just do the same thing where we go around it and just call
Oh,
object dot
oh,
dir?
okay. Right. Yes.
That works, so, it works locally, like.
It's
command
just
line or
dot dir
something,
is
so,
the right.
__ or __ dir __.
Just like the get attribute one.
Yes, yeah.
All right. That does not seem like it's what it should do. What? I don't know why it's doing that.
I feel like he just tried to redefine existing things to do his own stuff with it. Using stuff is kind of tricky. I've seen some of the details, the implementation details of that, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, let me just see if there's any other calls to dir. Well, I feel better when the problem is because of some spooky action at a distance in doc assemble, breaking things
Yes, yeah.
here in my code. Did it finish? Okay. I guess it shouldn't matter. We should be able to get the same thing loading or saving, but I guess I'm just gonna check on a new one run anyway. Okay. I think this is going to be it, though. That makes sense. Attribute list just was empty, so it never was actually looking at the objects.
No,
Yeah.
wow.
Okay, well, thank you for letting me debug that with you, even if it was mostly just to be rubber duck. I was not spotting those problems other without that. Okay, so I'll just let this take this later because I have a 1 o'clock and I'll need a break before I start that. But
Cool.
Thanks.
Sounds good.